Hey y'all, Captain Jan here. Today we're going to be checking out this BYOPP, Build Your Own Push Pole. It's a new push pole out by Railblaza. It's their 21-foot Trident Push Pole, all carbon. It's really cool. This is a prototype, so I'm going to show you some kind of neat aspects of it, kind of give you a tour around it. We're going to show you how to build it, at least based on the instructions that were given to me at the time that they released this to me. I do expect that they'll be making some changes, changing some formulations and stuff. In my conversations with them, this is still a prototype, but I think it's a really cool push pole. I think you should definitely start keeping it on your radar if you're going to be looking for a push pole in the coming future. Definitely check this thing out. I'm also going to put this up against my good old-fashioned Stiffy Hybrid 21-foot push pole. I've had that thing for almost 20 years now. I use it all the time. I really like it. And for me, it's really been sort of the benchmark, the bar that I've kind of compared all other push poles to. You can see I'm all gloved up, ready to go. So let's get into putting this push pole together. So in the kit, what they sent to me comes with a couple of really important things. It comes with some acetone wipes, really good. You're gonna need those to clean down the pole. Also, if you, there'll be some extra epoxy that will spooge out, if you will, as you put the two poles together. You're going to want to wipe and clean that up. Comes with an epoxy kit, and it also comes with these mixing tips. If you've never used one of these, they are great. I love these things. We also use these at New Wire Marine with weld mount. We have a weld mount kit that you can buy. And what it does is it mixes the epoxy for you, so you don't have to worry about measuring it out. You just put the tip on the end, plunge it down, and it gives you a perfect mix. Now, I've added a few other things. Got some shop towels. I got a little extra acetone, some blue painter's tape. I'll show you how I use that. And then also some nitrate gloves. It does come with some really good instructions. Again, I would just preface this by saying that this is a prototype kit. A few of the things on this kit may change in the future, but just wanted to show you what I got. Now, real quick on the tip and the foot, I'm going to show you those. These are not the final versions. These are actually 3D printed with some high-grade plastic. Honestly, I don't know. I'll try to remember in the comments to add what kind of plastic was, but these are 3D printed for now. They're not the final version, but they're super strong. They look good. The only thing I would say, certainly for me here in the low country, I do a lot of pulling over top of oysters, and I would be a little concerned about the tip. You know, maybe wearing out pretty quick. On my Stiffy push pole, I do have a stainless steel tip on it. Here's the foot that they've designed. Pretty traditional looking foot. You know, it probably will work great, no problems. Again, the finish on it, because this is a 3D printed piece right now, it's not the final production piece. It doesn't have the final look on it, but I would say from a design standpoint, yeah, it's probably got all the characteristics good push pole foot needs. I think about 27 years ago was the last time I actually built a multi-piece push pole. And in that kit, the ferrules, which is this piece here, were loose, and you had to actually put the ferrule in, get it to cure, and then put the other in. Now, on this kit, the ferrules are actually built into the process when they make the pole, or the carbon pole here. So that's really going to speed things up. Looks really good. Real sharp. I like the carbon weave. I'm going to try and zoom in here the best I can. I like the weave. I like the style. It's very low profile. Feels good so far. So yeah, see how it comes out. So you can see I got some newspaper down there to kind of catch anything that drips. One thing that they don't say to do in the instructions, but I can tell you from my experience, having assembled a couple of push poles and then also repaired push poles with ferrule kits, adding some blue painter's tape right at the joint is going to make the cleanup later a lot easier. When the two pieces were brought together, a lot of epoxy comes out of this seam. Well, to ease and cleanup, having a little extra painter's tape here, even though we're going to wipe it off immediately with acetone, having the blue painter's tape there just makes the cleanup that much easier. All right, so I'm taping up the other end. One thing I like to do, and I don't know, this is just kind of me, I take the end of the tape and I fold it over itself so I have a little tab. This way, when I go to pull this tape off, all I got to do is grab this and start unwinding. Makes it a lot easier later. Real quickly, just to show that you want to completely cover this ferrule. because this is what will go inside as you slowly turn it to make the really to bond the two pieces together. So you want to make sure it's covered quite well. As you can see, you get a lot of epoxy coming out. You want to make sure you have something on the ground to catch it all, otherwise you're going to end up with epoxy all over your floor. So one other thing it says in the instructions is every few minutes, about 30 to 60 seconds, you want to rotate the push pole while it sets up. Now the setup time is approximately 15 minutes, but you want to do a couple of things here. You want to constantly rotate it because any of the epoxy in there, you don't want it to pool on one side. The other thing is this will also help it cure in a straight fashion if you keep rotating it. So we're going to keep rotating it here for a little bit, and then in about an hour or so, we're going to go ahead and put the other end on. Now, make sure you have plenty of space for this project. Obviously, the pole's 21 feet long. I'm doing it in my garage. I have it held up in multiple places so that it can I can easily rotate it, but yeah, don't do this in the sun. Make sure you have good ventilation for health and safety reasons and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're gonna need a little bit of space to do this job. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we've got the second ferrule secured, rotated every 30 to 60 seconds so that we don't get any pooling. You can see here, it already started to pull apart, so it's important to catch that and make sure you squeeze that back together quickly. Now what you'll feel like over here where the ferrule went in and the epoxy is starting to cure, you'll actually feel this side of the pole start to get warm. Just normal process of the curing process of the epoxy, but because of that, it can cause these gaps to expand. So again, keep an eye on this for like the next 5 to 10 minutes, making sure that you, if it does expand, you bring it back together and hold it tight. All right, at this point, really the only thing left to do is let it cure. It takes about 24 hours for the epoxy to cure. So tomorrow I'll take the pole, I'll remove the tape from it. If there's any extra or excess epoxy, I'll clean that up best I can. And then got to get this thing out on the water and give it a test. Let's do some completely unscientific tests here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to weigh the two push poles, see which one weighs more than the other. As you can see, the Railblaza Trident 21-foot push pole comes in at just over 3.8 pounds. Let's see where the stiffy comes in. As you can see here, the stiffy is just over 4.5 pounds. So about 3/4 of a pound, less than 1 pound difference between the poles. Is that going to make that much of a difference throughout the day? Probably not. Somebody who's up on the polling platform does this for a living. They may notice a little bit of a difference over time, but the average user, yeah, you're really not going to notice the difference. Is it a little bit lighter? Yeah, but it's not significantly lighter. So here you can see the stiffy foot, well used, well abused. In fact, I probably need to clean it, but it's a pretty decently wide foot, has a large surface area, here on the bottom. I'll compare that in a second, but it's a tried and true push pole foot. It's worked well. Railblaza, their version, a little bit narrower, a little thinner. Don't think that'll change the performance much. It'll be interesting to see the thickness in this foot, the mud foot here, to see if that has any difference compared to this. The pointy ends stick a little bit further down than the stiffy, but yeah, overall it's looking pretty good. I would say there's no significant differences that I would expect from a performance standpoint. The only thing would be how well this works in the mud versus this, based on the actual thickness of it. So let's take a look at that. So here's a look at the bottom of the foot. That's the stiffy. There's the Railblaza. You can see a little bit of the difference that they've designed. These forks come a little bit further down than the stiffy push pole, right? These are a little bit more rounded. These are cut off a little bit more. And just remember, this is still a prototype, a push pole. I don't know if they've finalized the foot design. This one is 3D printed, so it is not the final production look and feel. It's probably a little bit more rough than the final version, say compared to the stiffy, which obviously has been around for a long time. The thickness of the stiffy is pretty thick, actually. So this foot section here Nearest makes no difference. Measures out to, what is that? About 1.5 inches, I would say, more or less. I mean, that's 1.5 inches would be right there. So, you know, probably because I've used it a little bit, the edges are worn down. But let's just, for the sake of argument, we're gonna call it just shy of 1.5 inches. Railblaza, it's a little bit narrower. So this one comes in, what is that? Just shy of 1.25 inches. You know, 1.25 inches should be right about here. So just shy of 1.25 inches. So more or less, this prototype version versus a Stiffy, the foot width, so the amount of space you have here versus here, it's about 1/4 of an inch difference. I'll be honest with you, I really don't think that'll make that much of a difference. What I'll have to do is get them both stuck in the mud and see how hard they are to pull out. But honestly, I don't think you're gonna see that much or feel that much of a difference there. But it does give you an idea of sort of what's the difference between the two right now. So here's a comparison of the tips of my old Stiffy push pole. Obviously, I've got the stainless steel tip on it. This one does not have a stainless steel tip, but also looking at the diameter of the poles themselves, this one works out to be just about 1.3, it's like 1.265 inches in diameter, based on my micrometer and also kind of where you measure. It's really consistent, but yeah, call it just over 1.25 inches in diameter. The Stiffy, on the other hand, is much beefier. So this one comes in at about, what is that, 1.4 inches in diameter, more or less. And again, this pole is about 21 years old. I'm sorry, this one's about just over 20 years old. I had to do the math there. A little over 20 years old. And it's, yeah, just about 1.4 inches wide. So the new pole is a little bit narrower in diameter. As you saw from the weights, the Railblaza Trident Push Pole is about 3.8 pounds, and my hybrid Stiffy is a little over 4.5 pounds. So not quite a 1 pound difference between the two. I don't expect to feel much moving it around, you know, using it up on the platform. Probably both will perform pretty close to each other. So one thing I was kind of curious about is where's the center of gravity? So what I did is I set both poles to the point to when they just started to tip down to the ground. And as you can see, they're both balanced very similar. If I move the push pole, either one push pole back that way just a little bit, they rise up off the ground. So as far as like, does the weight of this pole foot versus that foot make any difference? No. I also did the same. I spun it around, did the same thing with the tip end, and really made nearly no difference. So they're both centered, or at least I should say both of them have a extremely consistent center of mass. The center of mass of both poles is pretty much identical one to the other. So don't know if that makes a big difference from a performance standpoint, but it means that they are both very similar. So from a testing standpoint, that'll kind of help. Next thing I wanted to do is see which pole is got more rigidity, it's more stiff. What's interesting here is both poles are pretty much at the same spot. I have them down there a little bit past midway, and then the foot way back here, the feet are wedged to keep them to keep the pole from tilting up. When I measured it, the center point here to the ground is 42 inches. When I measured this one, the center point right here was just shy of 42.5. So unweighted, I think this is a little bit lighter. It has a little less droop. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna put a similar amount of weight on each one and measure how much rigidity they have, basically how much flex there is, just to see which pole is technically the stiffer of the two poles. To do the weight test, I'm using a box of screws, self-tapping screws, and a clamp. Both of these items together weigh just shy of 4 pounds. So in this completely and totally unscientific test, when I clamp the box of screws and including the weight of the clamp, which is 4 pounds, it went from 42.5 inches to about 35 inches of deflection. So that's about 7.5 inches of deflection from horizontal before we started. So let's take a look and see what the stiffy does. So once again, completely unscientific, but same clamp, same box of screws, and we'll call that 34 3/4 to the center point. Remember, this one started at 42.5, so 7 3/4 of an inch. I'll be honest with you, it's really like almost identical. I think it's kind of interesting, right? So I expected one to actually have more deflection than the other, but they are both within 1/4 of an inch of each other with 4 pounds of weight on the end of the pole. And as you can see, I have it just on the other side of the center point is the center of mass for the pole. So, and you know, you can see this is not supporting it in any way, shape, or form. Interesting test. It is, I will say, in my previous experiences with 3-piece or sectional push poles where you have to build them, I usually find a bit more flex. So the carbon that they're using for this Trident Railblaza push pole, 21 foot, is pretty darn stiff, especially when you consider this push pole is almost a pound heavier and almost 1/4 of an inch thicker diameter. So I'm really freaking impressed by that. So you can see here, this is where the tape was. I removed the tape, and this is where the two ferrules come together. There's a little teeny bit of epoxy here, which I can get rid of that really easily, try to smooth that out. The joints or the junctions where the ferrules go, you know, I made it really tight. Is there gonna be a little bit of a transition there? Yeah, there is. Am I really gonna notice it while poling? Probably not. We'll see once I get out on the water whether or not the transition between the two pieces, the two poles where the ferrule is, if I actually even notice it. Probably won't. Like I say, I'm gonna come back, knock this down a little bit real easily, and get rid of this extra epoxy. But yeah, final thoughts. So final thoughts. It went together real easily. Again, it's a prototype. How does it compare to the Stiffy push pole? I'll be honest with you, I was actually pretty surprised, especially in the rigidity test. Granted, it's only about 4 pounds at the center point, just seeing how much it flexes, but it's really close to the Stiffy push pole, which is actually pretty cool. Now the Stiffy is almost 20 years old, so what would this pole feel like in 20 years? Well, we'll have to come back and see. Hopefully you all hang around with me that long and we'll see what it's like in 20 years. But no, I think the pole is really good. It's a smaller diameter than the Stiffy. It's certainly at under a pound. It is a little bit lighter, so maybe you'll feel that more overall throughout the day. The foot design is a little bit different. Do I think it's gonna make that much of a difference in performance? I don't think so. So really the next thing is in the next few days, hopefully by this weekend, try to get out on the water with it, give it a try, see how it works, see how it feels, and see how it compares to the Stiffy. But I would say compared to most other brands that I have tried, and I'm not gonna name drop here, this one seems a little bit better kit, a higher quality product, especially the carbon. And the stiffness is, I think, the part that surprised me. Most times, especially with other versions that I've seen, the stiffness of the material, especially with a couple of ferrules in it, it isn't quite the level of what I would have with a one-piece Stiffy push pole. So it'll be interesting to see how this performs over time. Appreciate you checking in with me. I'm glad you stuck through this. Definitely, I'll be giving you an update on how it performs. Other than that, Captain Jan, I'm out. See ya.